good morning all. I thought I would showcase this kind of little guide slash video to passing your test in the UK, your driving test. Kind of had a look around on YouTube when I was learning to drive and I couldn't really find anything, and this channel's kind of a mishmash of videos and things that come out of my brain that I just kind of want to make. So I wanted to make a video to help some people, I guess, pass the driving test, get them a little bit more confident on the road and just get them going, because I know that's something I struggled with. And I had a look around the internet and everything's American, where they're driving through cones and they're driving automatics, and there wasn't too much on England based driving. Similarly, when I was doing jury duty, there was nothing on jury duty, and once I'd done that, I made a video explaining it all to try ease some nerves. So I'll try to do the same here. So the videos I've watched when you're learning to drive and trying to give you tips are more mechanical, as in they're sat in the car explaining how you physically learn to drive. This video isn't going to be explaining how you physically learn to drive, no. I want to explain sort of the ins and outs of how I sort of learned to drive, the process, what tools I use to help me, websites and other little things that I found useful that, you know, weren't really on YouTube. So I've got a little checklist here so I don't waffle too much. The first step is going to be you want to learn. You want to be ready to learn, which sounds daft because if you're on this video, you're wanting to learn. But how do I explain it? For me, if somebody tells me to do something, I'll struggle with it. If someone says go and learn to drive, even though I might want to learn to drive, if somebody's told me, right, go and learn to drive, I will struggle. So I found that I was a bit older when I learned to drive. I was 25, maybe I was 24 going into 25, and I felt like I was quite old on the road. There will be people older than me watching this that are thinking about learning to drive. There will be people younger than me. And I felt like I was a bit older on the road, but I wanted to learn when I was ready. I'd never been interested in learning to drive. You know, I don't mind cars. I just kind of got sick of public transport. Sometimes it would rain and I just got sick of basically not having a little bit of freedom. But I never had the confidence to learn, and it was only when I got a little bit older did I feel like I actually was ready to learn. And I think that took a lot of pressure off, because there was nobody sort of egging you on. Your friends weren't like, oh, are you learning to drive as well? Let's all learn to drive at the same time and try pass similar times and all that. I just learned at my own pace, and I think that's what you really want to do, is just be ready in yourself. It doesn't matter if you're 55 or 18. If you feel like you're actually ready to sit in the driver's seat of a car and start to learn, then that's the perfect time to do it. It doesn't really matter what age you are. The second thing, which I thought was missed off on some guides on the internet, was have the money, which sounds odd. Now, this is not an easy thing to do. Learning to drive is super expensive. It's like obnoxiously expensive, to be honest. So try and have at least, I would say, a large portion of the money there, if that is all possible. Obviously, you know, no, we're not made of money. That's clearly not possible. But for me, the reason I saved up and had the money there before I went and began to practice was driving's stressful enough. You've got a whole load of things been thrown at you and a whole load of, different, things to learn. You've got theory, you've got actual roads, you've got all the ins and outs of should I be going, should I be stopping, or what should I be doing with my hands and feet, and it's quite a daunting task. So to have in the back of your mind, like as you start the lesson, oh damn, like that was another 20 quid wasted, that was another 40 quid wasted, that was another 100 quid wasted. It gets quite stressful that you're starting to not think about practicing and trying to make efficient use of the time in the car. You're actually trying to think, I better get this done because I need the money. I need to get this done. So maybe not have the money, but try to take learning to drive when you're comfortable and try and complete it. I've known people that start to learn to drive. They'll spend £500 starting. They'll just run out of money, or something will crop up, they run out of time, some job, or they have to go somewhere, and they end up putting it down, and then when they re-pick it back up, it takes them like 15 lessons to get back in the swing of things, and then that's more money. So to end up, I would say to save money, you kind of want money, which is, if that makes sense, because it is very stressful. Towards the end of my learning to drive, I got quite stressed, thinking like, this is just costing so much, I'm rubbish, like his next lesson's another 24 quid. Like it was getting quite stressful. So in an ideal world, which we don't live in, but in an ideal world, I would say have some of the money there. Now, before we even begin to drive and we've even stepped into the car, I would say have a practice. I honestly would say I was unbelievably nervous getting into the car. When I thought about learning to drive, I'd left it so long and I was a bit older that I felt, oh, I'm ready now. I'm ready. I'm just going to ring up some instructors. I'm going to book someone and I'm going to set off, and I'll be a bit iffy, but you know, I'm not stupid. I'll pick it up. He'll help me or she'll help me and it'll be fine. But let me tell you, when I got in that car, having never sat in a driver's seat of a car before, when I sat in that car and my driver was like, we're going to do a hill start, because that was my very first lesson, was a hill start in the snow. Yes, I was like thrown well into the deep end. And he was like, keep your feet steady. I didn't even know what he meant by keep your feet steady, which I'll get into in a second. But my leg was legit shaking. Like, I was actually like really nervous when I just didn't think I would be nervous. So why was I nervous? I think I was nervous because I like to be in control. And when you're put in a car and the person sat next to you says, don't worry, if anything goes wrong, I'll do all the buttons, I'll press all the buttons and all the levers, and I'll take control and you'll be fine. You kind of think you're a bit of a sitting duck. You're like sat in the car and you're like, whoa, like, do I want to be in this position? Am I ready for this? And for me, not being able to stop the car comfortably, which you won't be able to do, don't worry. Like, I had absolutely no practice. Don't think you need any practice. I'd never even sat in a driver's seat of a car, and I passed, so you can do it. So I was so nervous because I was thinking, if this car does something erratic, like I accidentally lift the clutch up too much or something, and it shot forward, or something happened, a car pulled in front of me, I'd want to know how to stop. And when those first few lessons were coming around, I didn't know how to do that, which sounds ridiculous. Some people might be watching this going, it's start-stop. But when you're in the heat of the moment and you're doing a hill start and you set off and you come out of a junction and something whizzes past you, if you don't know how to stop it comfortably in yourself, you're going to feel nervous. So in an ideal world, I would have done this the other way around. So what I ended up doing was, I found my instructor, booked my instructor, had about 10 lessons, and then I started to practice. And after the practice, so I was going around in some supermarket car parks at night, large car parks. I went with friends and I went with some family, and I just practiced very simply. I'm starting the car, I'm trying to start the car as smooth as possible, and I'm slowing the car and I'm stopping the car as smooth as possible. And honestly, I did that for like a few weeks, and then I started to do turn-ins on the car park. I didn't even do turn-ins. I was like, I just want to get comfortable with stopping. Now, after I felt like, okay, you know what, when my next lesson comes around, because I'd done this practice, I can stop the car comfortably. I felt just much more at ease going into the lesson. I wasn't as nervous waiting for the lesson, because that's the thing as well. You will be nervous waiting for the lesson. You're thinking, is he turning up on time? I'm going to get in this car, or I'm on the road. Oh my God. And just taking all these small little things out of your mind, for me, made it much more enjoyable as it went on. Because, yeah, basically, you felt more comfortable in the car. You had a little bit more road time, and you weren't absolutely overwhelmed because you kind of knew some basics. So in an ideal world, if you can maybe get a day's insurance, or a few days insurance, or just practice, in a car park super quiet with an older, more experienced driver or something. That's what I did, and that worked really well. So ideally, I'd do that before I find an instructor, which sounds a bit backwards, but I think by having those, even just an hour or two practice of stop in the car, that's going to save you about 5 or 6 lessons, which is about 120 quid, so it's pretty worthwhile if you can get in a bit of practice. Now, once you've had a bit of practice, you've got the money and you've actually want to learn, you're obviously wanting to find an instructor. Now, there are loads of ways to find instructors. You can check Facebook for your local driving schools. YouTube is a huge place now for driving. There's like guides and all that type of stuff. And there's word of mouth. You might find some leaflets. You might know a friend or a family member that's learnt to drive. Just ask them to be honest, like what was like he or she, what was the instructor like? Were they strict? Were they kind? Were they, you know, considerate? Were they super strict? Were they always on time? You know, how were they with bookings? Did they mess people about? Because the instructor's the person you're going to be sat with in the car for like quite a few hours, so you're going to want to like your instructor. Now for me, I just winged it, and one night I built up the courage. I was like, you know what, I am ready to learn to drive. And a girl I knew, she'd learned to drive recently. She'd passed, and I thought, right, she's passed, I know her, I speak to her, I'll ask her who did she learn with. And then I rang up the person and I just said, that sounds great. I said, do you take absolute beginners that have learned nothing? I said, I absolutely know nothing about this. He was like, yeah, sure, we'll arrange a date. And then it happened, and then got picked up, and off I was driving. So I didn't really do much research. Now, luckily, my instructor was a much older bloke, which kind of suited me. And he was a bit more down to earth. You could say some stuff, you know, it'd be a bit of a laugh. It wasn't super strict. It wasn't an actual driving school. It was his own, I guess, company. And it just depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for the brand name and you're looking for the company that you know you can trust and aren't going to arse you about, you can stick with them. If you know somebody that sounds like your type of teacher, my type of teacher is I like someone that's a bit strict. I don't really like someone that's trying to teach me and trying to be my friend. It gets a bit annoying. I'd rather just separate them. I'm like, listen, you're here to teach me to drive. I'm going to try soak it all in. You know, and that's how I prefer. So I preferred it that it was a little bit stricter. And also, I asked the girl, and she basically said he throws you in at the deep end, which is kind of the way I hate learning, but also need, because I need that bit of a push. So I knew also with him throwing me in the deep end, and what I mean by that was, first lesson was a hill start, drove quite a long way around my town. I did 3 roundabouts. I went 40 miles an hour. And I couldn't even steer the damn car. So when I got back in after my very first lesson, I was like, whew, I was like absolutely overwhelmed. But I kind of enjoyed it because I was like, well, it only gets better from here. Like, remember, your first day is going to probably be your worst because you're so nervous and you've never done it before. So you're only going to get better, and you should remember that. And I knew that with him doing that on my first lesson, he wasn't going to take me for a ride and try and eke out money by making me drive up and down a straight road for 10 lessons and take my money. I knew he was being honest, and on that point, sort of in a way, you employ them, which is a bit of an arse-ish way to look at it, if I'm being honest. But don't be worried or scared if you're not getting along, that you can leave. Like, if you're for some reason just really not clicking, or your driving lessons aren't fun and you don't sort of look forward to them, there's going to be nerves and anxiety. But if you're not sort of looking forward to them, you should change your instructor. So I had some problems with my instructor towards the end where we started to argue with each other. I won't really get into that. But I sort of thought to myself, I've come this far with this bloke. It's gone really well. He has helped me. We're having a few, you know, a little bit of come-ins together, but overall it's been fine. I'll stay with him. Now, if I'd have been further away from my test date when we started to have these problems, I would have left. Because now that since I've passed, I've driven in different types of cars. They're all the same. Like, I was very worried that if I'd learnt in his car, Like I'd learn in, let's say, a Ford Fiesta, and then I stopped getting along with my instructor. I'd then ring up somebody that drives a Clio, and I'd be like, oh, it's completely different. It's going to take me ages. It's going to take you like 1 or 2 lessons, and it's just going to be like normal. Like, don't think that changing instructor is a massive thing that's going to set you back months and months. It won't. So yeah, I would say that don't be scared about leaving your instructor, but also give them some time. I think a lot of people do bin off their instructors too quickly, and I think it partly becomes they're frustrated at themselves that they're not learning quick enough, and then they start to butt heads, and it just becomes a bit nasty. Whereas I'm quite chill, and I just thought, you know what, like sometimes I would have quite an argument, but then we'd pull up to the side, would chat about it, would explain from my point of view what I thought went wrong, what he thought went wrong, and we figured it out like adults, right? So that's how it went for me, and I never had to change instructor, and I passed first time, which was very lucky. So just don't be scared about leaving them. You know, it's not a big thing, but also, you know, you don't have to bin them off instantly, right? Give them a chance. So now that you're in the car, you've got your instructor, you're driving, what do you do? Well, what I did is, if I can bring you to here, is I started to watch YouTube. By watching YouTube, I picked up quite a few channels, and since I've basically passed, there's been quite a lot more YouTube channels pop up, and I still stay in tune with them. So I'll give you a few examples here of people that I watched that helped me learn to drive. So I ended up watching Go-To Driving School. Go-To Driving School, I'm not sponsored by these people or anything, I just ended up watching them. Was a channel I ended up watching. Also, Learner Driver School, if we just turn this down. The LDC Center. So basically, all these things sound silly. On paper, watching somebody in a car is not at all like watching somebody or watching yourself drive or being in a car. It's completely different. Watching YouTube videos isn't going to pass your test. You're still going to have to physically learn to drive. But what I found was, particularly the Learner Driver Center, was they're a slightly older channel. I don't think they upload anymore. But with the Learner Driver Center, there are videos, and you can watch people's journeys from lesson 1 to like all the way to like lesson 20, 30, there's 15 and stuff. What I found gave me the confidence to actually learn to drive was, there was a girl on here, I think she was called Danielle, and right at the beginning she really wasn't confident. She just began to basically learn to drive, and she was with this bloke called Bob. Bob was super nice, and this bloke here, Bob, I don't know if he still makes videos or not, but his demeanor really, I thought to myself, oh, like learner, like instructors can be nice, because I had this vision of the instructors were really like horrible, and they were gonna like rag on you because you were like bad. I don't know, that was just me. I just thought like they'd be quite pushy and a bit like, oh come on mate, like. But they were so nice, and this bloke was so like welcoming and calm with his students that as I watched the videos, I thought to myself, this is good, like, because this girl was definitely nervous, and you could watch her from lesson 1 all the way to like lesson 20, 30, and you could see her confidence growing, which helped me, I guess, get some confidence, because I thought, if this person's super nervous lesson 1, and then 20 weeks down the line she's flying, I thought to myself, you know what, like that shows you can watch the progress of somebody. So I found that really useful. So Learner Driver Center was really good, the Learner Driver Center. And then there was these ones which were slightly different styles. Now, Purple Driving is a woman called, I guess, Helen Adams, and I've watched a lot of these videos, not so much recently because I think she took a break, but she's lots of videos in the background here, and her videos are slightly longer form. It's slightly less on the actual drive, and the camera's kind of further back, and she talks more about, I guess, a little bit more, I'd say, about the theory of driving. You know, what to think when you're approaching a roundabout, or signs to make your decisions more comfortable and quicker, because then as you're making decisions better, your driving's going to be better. So I found this channel as well, Purple Driving Helen Adams, very useful. Go To Driving was again useful. This was a slightly, I would say, more YouTube-y kind of channel. It's a little bit more thumbnails, a little bit, I'm not going to say clickbait, because it's not clickbait at all, but it's kind of a YouTube-y brand. But he does really explain a lot in his videos and does give a really good amount of tips. And this was a new one that I've noticed pop up recently, which I've kind of been watching, is DGN Driving School, and he does a whole variety, and he really breaks down in the lessons what exactly, you know, goes on as you're watching this. For example, he'll pop up on screen serious driving fault, and as you're watching these, yes, you're not technically driving, but you do get an idea of common things that go wrong. Like there, he had to brake because you didn't quite check on the left hand side before turning right, and you get an idea of the common things that happen on the road, and they're just nice to watch. Like, you just watch maybe just one a day. If you watched one a day, that's 7 hours of content between lessons. Let's say you have one a week, and yeah, like, I would say they're really useful. Ashley Neal is one. He's in Liverpool, and he does these kind of quick videos which give you kind of more information and a little bit more analysis based, such as like when to position, how to gear down properly, and I've really enjoyed watching Ashley Neal's videos. And then the last one, he's an older bloke, very down to earth, very simple. He's called Learn to Drive Travis, and I found him to be very good because he's very no nonsense. He just explains it as it is, and he's very reassuring. Very reassuring, and he's very simple. He doesn't make things overly complicated. A lot of people make things sound more complicated than they are, and that can confuse you because you're thinking it is, at the end of the day, just driving a car. But again, he'll just, very common theme of these, he'll just sit in the car, he'll film it. This is slightly more of a road angle, and he'll just, you know, this is a mock, so he won't be particularly talking too much, but he'll be chatting and explaining things, and they're really, I find them quite enjoyable to watch even after you've passed your pick up little things. So yeah, I thought that was pretty useful. Those are some channels, and again, that was Learn to Drive Travis. So once you're watching YouTube and you're driving, I would say the next step is to physically, as well as doing your lessons, is to go out with family and friends. And what I mean by this is, you don't have to drive their car or drive with them or drive them about. I just mean when you're sat in the passenger seat, maybe your dad or your mum or your sister or whatever says, oh, I'm driving to a shopping centre, or I'm driving wherever. Just hop along, say I'll come with you, and you'll notice that when you've learnt to drive, when you're learning to drive, it's completely different. So if you're sat in the passenger seat and you've never learned to drive, you don't really think about anything like, oh, my mum or my dad's clutched down in here, he's got into third. Oh, he was in fourth, but then a bus pulled out and he didn't go to third, he actually went to second. And then he indicated. You don't notice all these things when you're not learning to drive, because you've never done it before, so you're not tuned in. Once you've actually started to learn to drive, the journeys, the small journeys or big journeys, become a lot more useful, because yeah, you just pick up little things and you'll notice things, like I say, like you'll be like, oh, he's going up a hill, he's slightly down geared, or he's stayed in his gear, or oh look, when he approaches this junction, he's slowly edging out, or he's holding it on his bike. And these are things that you notice that you just wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't learned to drive. So once you've learned and you start having some lessons, I would say just pop out occasionally with your family and friends. As always, you know, you are learning, so I would say work on your mistakes. We all have mistakes. Don't beat yourself up about them. And also, please don't put a time frame on passing. If you put a time frame on passing, you're just going to stress yourself out. I think I took like 35 lessons. 10 were super nervous. I think if I'd have done these steps, I could have passed within 20 lessons easily. But I didn't do the process, and I got nervous, and, you know, it was just a bit, you know, certain lessons weren't going well. An example was, for about 5 or 6 lessons, every time I approached the end of a junction, my instructor wanted me to catch the car on my bite. So basically, I wasn't stopping at the end of any junction, and that was making me super nervous because I was thinking I was going to shoot out. And it just all got a bit wish-washy, and if I'd have just had a bit more practice beforehand and just had a bit more authority to say, actually, I don't really like that approach, can we do it a different way, I'm sure we could have worked some stuff out. So again, just working on your mistakes, like, oh, I'm not very good at roundabouts. Maybe the next lesson, if you've had an awful day on roundabouts, just say to your driver, next week I'd actually like to do some more roundabouts because it didn't go that well, and I'd like to do some more. Or you can do it the opposite way and say, you know what, last time we did roundabouts, I got really flustered. I'd like to not do roundabouts today, because it might stress me out and I might just ruin my whole lesson. So I'd prefer to just do some regular driving and then maybe resume it the following week when you're a bit clearer. Or maybe you want to go out with your parents or a friend and see how they do roundabouts, and then you might be ready to tackle it. So just try to work on your mistakes. You know, it's difficult, but it's also easy to pass in the same sense. So yeah, don't beat yourself up. Work on your mistakes and just keep plodding along like that. And then I'd say probably my last tip, I've probably forgotten loads, but I might make some in the comments. Just take the test when you're ready. So for me, like, I just probably could have took my test on, like, I think it was about the 25th lesson. It started to click and I started to think, okay, like, yeah, this is clicking now. Definitely could start to, like, book tests. But I just waited until I felt truly comfortable in the car driving myself, because I felt like if I get on that test day and I think to myself, I'm not quite ready, you're going to fail. You want to feel ready when you book your test, so just don't book it too early. I don't know what it's like where you're watching this video. In my local area, you could book a test and within 2 weeks you could be doing your test, so you could cancel it and rebook. Now I know in London, my friend said it took him 3 months to book, so you don't have that flexibility. I guess it depends where you're from, but for me, because I didn't have to book miles in advance and it didn't take 3 months, I could be a little bit less stressed and take the test basically when I felt ready, which was a big help. The last thing I've got as well is, obviously this is kind of back a few steps, but when you've started to learn to drive and you're watching YouTube and you're going out with friends and family, things will start to click as you're driving. And as things start to click as you're driving, that's when I would recommend doing your theory. A lot of people say do your theory before your tests, do your theory before you even start learning to drive. The way I did it was, I found learning to drive was quite overwhelming. It was quite baffling at times, and you will find yourself, like, sometimes you're super tired for the whole day just off a single lesson, because it's quite a lot to take in. It's all new. So when things started to click, such as, I remember really when it was, early on, your instructor's going to take control of most of the checks, sort of looking about, most of the mirror looks and all that kind of stuff. You're just basically driving the car a bit like a go-kart and he's looking out for you. And then one day he said to me, all right, today I want you to do the mirrors. And I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to do all the mirrors. And it just felt overwhelming, and I felt like I was relearning again, and I thought, I'm never gonna do this. I felt like I was getting somewhere, and then I'm never going to do this, it's way too difficult. But then 3 or 4 weeks later, I found myself, I'm actually doing the mirrors okay, and I'm not thinking so much about my feet here, and things are starting to click. And then I could really start to hone down my little skills that I thought I needed to pass the test. I'm not trying to say I'm a good driver, because I'm not, but the little things that you struggle with, let's say parking, you could start to hone in on those in some lessons. And when I felt more comfortable and like everything wasn't too overwhelming, that's when I worked on my theory. And this is all I used. It is the only app I've ever bought. I don't buy anything if you don't have to, but this, like, there's no reason not to buy it. It's in the App Store, official DVSA theory test kit. Basically, it has theory tests with about 1,000 questions, all different kind of categories, and the way the question is pictured, or worded and pictured here, like you see, it is pretty much word for word how it is in your actual theory test. So after studying this, and I didn't study it a lot, don't get me wrong, like, it's pretty simple, it's quite a lot of it's basic knowledge. You know, like, if someone's running across the road, should you speed up and knock them over and do a donut on their head, or should you brake? It's like, okay, it's obviously do a donut, right? So when you're doing this, all the questions are how they're going to be worded in your theory exam, and also it has a built-in hazard perception test. It explains it all, and even though it hasn't got the most examples in a hazard perception test, just seeing it and understanding what it's like and how to operate it, this just, but yeah, it basically £5. It's like super cheap for what it is, and you'll 100% pass your theory test with that. Like, I'm not, like, I don't get paid for this or anything like that. I'm just telling you, like, it was actually worth buying. And that's it, really. I just wanted to give some tips. I just wanted to give some tips to people trying to learn to drive. So if you've enjoyed the video, if it's helped you, leave a comment and a thumbs up. There's ways to just support me in the description to keep me making videos, keep me sane. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Hopefully this has helped you pass your test. If it does, come back and leave a comment and say, I passed my test. And I'll be like, fucking great, mate. So there you go. Boom. We're done. It's a wrap. Wrap it up. Wrap it up.